See if this works. I think it is, yes. Excellent. It's very bright up here. It's very dark out there, so I hope I don't put you to sleep. Thanks. I flew in from India yesterday to Switzerland, and then I flew here today, so I thought it might be wise for me just to capture a few of my thoughts on paper, or this presentation could get a bit confusing. I'm fascinated with networks. I've always been fascinated with networks since platforms started to evolve to help us connect. If we think back to the original networks, the idea was that you would connect with somebody that you met, and then you would never lose touch again, which in concept is great until you realize that you connect with several thousand people, and you're in touch with more people than you know what to do with. That is the challenge that I think that we are all faced today. As more and more platforms develop, as we get more and more comfortable connecting with people, following people, connecting with friends, we start to feel like we're a bit overwhelmed in this big sea of connections. I think that what struck me just in listening to Gary's presentation was this sense of community. Similar to networks, I think that we're now evolving into a different sense of what community means. A lot of our community today is online. If we look at how much time we engage with our friends, our family, our colleagues online versus meeting people in areas like this, it's starting to make a major shift. And I think that this is going to have a huge impact on the way that we build relationships and nurture them. I started thinking about this. I'm a consultant by nature, so I've been consulting for about 20 years. And I started to think about now in this new world of connectivity, what does that mean for us? And what I realized is that we're very good at connecting, posting, sharing, liking, tweeting, retweeting. And we've hit, I would say, a first-generation threshold in terms of the applications that are available today. There's a number called Dunbar's number where it says that we're only able to comfortably maintain about 150 stable relationships. And I think if I asked each one of you, you probably have more than 150 friends on either Facebook, more than 150 followers on Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. And so this raises a question for us, and this is what got me thinking. If I have a network of 1,000 people, for example, or let's say 500 people, what do I really know about that network? What types of positions do the people have in that network? What does that network look like across the world geographically? Can I visualize this network? What's happening in that network on a monthly basis? And what I found was that with the existing tools in place, I actually have no idea. So for example, I'm on LinkedIn. I have a lot of different contacts there, but I cannot tell you anything about what that network looks like to me. Nor can I take that information and do something with it outside of the platform. So this really inspired me to set up a new platform to help us nurture our networks and to be able to figure out what to do with all this connectivity that we have. When I think about this room, and I see all of you, and I think about the number of people here, it's not just the number of people sitting in this room when we talk about networks. Each one of you have your own network. So if we start to think about collectively how big is our network in this room, it easily goes into the 50,000, 100,000 number. Now, we've seen this number before. We all know about the impact of, let's say, second-degree connections, third-degree connections, but it stops there. Now, what I was thinking was, what if we could actually really do something with that? And that's what has inspired me to get started with this platform. Networking is one of those terms that we hear all the time. We hear about social networks, professional networks. We all assume that we understand what it means. But if we were to take a definition from each person in this room, I think that we would find that we have very different ideas of what a network means, and also what are networking types of activities. To me, networking is basically connecting with anyone all the time and achieving something from that relationship. Whether that's happiness, information that I need for a project, a new job, a new role, any type of conversation that we're getting by connecting with people. That's my very loose definition of networking. If we take it into that context, then what we do every day, we are constantly networking, whether we know it or not. And understanding what motivates us to network, what do we get out of our different relationships, will help us become more effective in achieving what motivates us in general. If we think, when we come to a conference like today, I think that we want to meet new people, and we want to see some old friends. When we start to get a bit deeper, why are we wanting to meet new people? Why do we want to see old friends? It starts to get a bit blurry. We know that we have different goals, but they're not as concrete as we seem to think. And I think that's because we don't have time to really step back and think about what are we trying to achieve while we're networking. So if we look at, for example, our livelihood, our career, every time that we meet a new person, every time we meet a new relationship, is that to advance our career? Is it to look for a new position, to find a new contract, to find an investor? It could be a combination of all of these things. On the personal side, and this is where I think a lot of people don't see networking as relevant, we are interacting with different people for different reasons. Maybe that's to get advice from our friends. Maybe that's to look for a new relationship. Maybe that's to do something fun. And if we look at social, which I find tremendously fascinating, how much time we spend on social and what motivates us to be there. Is it the self-recognition that we get from the engagement from our post? Is it the ability to connect with new people? Is it just entertainment for us? I find today that most of the social networking platforms are becoming faster and faster and faster. With this, we need to generate a lot of content to keep ourselves present there. Twitter is a good example. I don't use Twitter that often because I just cannot think of 10, 15, 20 ideas a day to tweet about. So I end up tweeting about one thing about once a week, which kind of defeats the purpose of being on Twitter. But I'm trying. So if we think about more concretely what are our motivations in each one of these circles, then we become more effective when we do connect with people, what we want to ask from them, what we expect from the time that we invest in those relationships. I think it's important to think about who are we? And who are we presenting when we meet with people, when we network with people online? We often have not had time to think about what is that one sentence that defines me. If we take, for example, me, my tagline might be, I'm very passionate about networking, so I want to help people network. Everything that I want to do around that, whether that's in social or in face-to-face, reflects that topic for me. So I develop content around that, I post around that. And on face-to-face, when I meet with people, I really want to understand what are their motivations. Thinking about this tagline is not something that you put on your profile and you say, look, this is who I am. It's really to help guide you when you start to meet different people to understand what you expect from those different relationships and when you're networking with them. What we find is that there's 3 different types of networkers. So there's a passive networker. So you go, you have a coffee, you meet somebody, you exchange ideas, you walk away, end of discussion, that's the end of that relationship. Or you meet somebody at a school event, and then that's it. And then we have the desperate networker, which is my favorite. They always show up when there's a crisis, and they need something immediately. They need money for something, or they need help finding a new position. And you always wonder, if that person would have stayed in touch over the years, I might be more willing to help. But because the person just shows up when there's a crisis, I'm not so willing to help. The desperate networker continues to find himself or herself in a cycle that gets worse and worse, because the more desperate he or she becomes, the less likely the network is going to be there to help the person. Mindful networking is anticipating a crisis. So if we think that we're going to need funding in 6 months, we start to think about the networks and the people around us that we're going to need to approach in 6 months and start to rebuild those relationships today. So that when we show up and meet with that person, it's not a surprise that we're going to ask for funding, it's just a question of time. This is really what is behind the concept of network relationship management. So using what you anticipate to happen and then building the networks of the relationships that you need in order to achieve that. Networking is really finding a balance between being visible and listening as well. The person that is too talkative, too busy, tends to find himself or herself shut out of the conversation. Likewise, if you're not part of the conversation, you find yourself irrelevant. So it's finding that balance between the two. If we think about today and how we interact, our online presence is actually more visible than our face-to-face interactions. We're connecting more and more with technology than we are actually face-to-face. If that is the case, then we need to think about what is our online style. So how do we present ourselves? What content do we share? Who do we interact with? How often are we out there? And is our network viewing my tagline the way that I would like my tagline to be viewed? What concerns me when I look at social media is that it's starting to become a bit boring. I think that everyone feels that we have now a digital trail that can be looked at and reevaluated at any point in time. So we start to make our profile photos look the same. We start to post news instead of real content. We don't really express opinions one way or the other. This trend towards being boring actually works against the concept of engaging on social media. Because eventually, when we look at all of this activity, we start to read it, we're not interested, and then we don't engage anymore, and then the platform dies. So I think that defining your networking style is not about becoming like everyone else. It's about figuring out who you are in this whole social media environment, as well as in the face-to-face world. A networking rhythm is really bringing together an understanding of your motivations, knowing which networks can help you, and then building the content to help stimulate those discussions. The first step is to really understand within your network where is the potential. So for example, if you have a network of 1,500 people or 1,000 people, there's probably 50 people in that network that can help you achieve about everything that you want. The challenge is being able to actually find those 50 people and work with them to achieve your motivations. What I do is I segment my network into different areas that help me understand that in smaller pieces. So going back to this 150, 200 number, if I have smaller networks in these type of categories, then I can provide content and I can nurture them differently. So for example, I might have my close friends network, I might have my college network, I might have my business colleagues network. And then as I need different things, I'm able to find these smaller pieces of my network and reach out to them. Once I understand the different segments of that network, then I start to think about the content that I need to keep that network engaged, produce and develop that content, and then that's where the rhythm starts, is I start to put together a plan of how I'm going to interact, whether that's going to be weekly, daily, monthly, with these different segments. What is important, I think, is that if you have a large network, engaging with your entire network all the time is exhausting, and it will tend to keep you very busy. Now, initially, you believe that this busyness is helping you achieve your goals, but in actuality, it's keeping you away from your goals, because you're tending to parts of your network that are not actually helping you, and you're not seeing the 50 people that could actually help you achieve your goals. So I think that as our networks have become so big, it's more a question of understanding what excites us from networking and the networks that we have. So I find very large networks exciting. I think there's a tremendous amount of potential in them. I think that there is technology coming today that can help us use them more effectively. But I also love small networks. So my real friends, my colleagues, where we can actually have meaningful conversations. Network relationship management is helping us to achieve both, having large networks and being able to find the small pieces within them. When I look at everyone here, I try to think about what the potential would look like if we were able to combine all of our networks together. So if everyone that we knew in this room could be put together in one picture, what would that look like? On a map, for example, what would be our global reach? Which countries would we all know people in? What types of companies, what types of people would we know? And using that information, if we were to pick some challenges, so what does the future look like for smart cities? I'm very confident that by combining our networks together, we would be able to achieve some of these challenging topics that are thrown at us. Because we have here enough network to do about anything that we would like to do. And that is what gets me out of bed every day when I think about Envoy and the technology behind that. It's being able to bring together all of our networks so that we can then start to work together in a collaborative way. And I think that this is a way that we'll be able to accomplish a lot of the challenges that we see in the near and long-term future. So thank you very much for listening. Is there questions, perhaps, on this topic? All right.
There are always questions. But sometimes it takes a little while.
Maybe everyone is saying, please don't ask a question so that we can leave.
No, because we still have a presentation, so we cannot leave yet. Any question? Because now you can ask, now you can give it a try. 3, 2, 1.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I look forward to seeing you
throughout
the next days.
Thank you.